So a blue-collar fisherman gets up in front of a crowd. He was never trained in rhetoric. He doesn't have a theology background. And he starts to talk about a man named Jesus of Nazareth, that he died, rose from the dead. He talks about forgiveness. And the text says, right after this part of our first reading now, that after the people heard this, their hearts were cut. They were cut to the heart. And on the spot, 3,000 of them were baptized. 3,000 of them said, I'm in. I'm in. And their lives are changed, and they begin to know, like really know, that they're loved by God. And that all happened because of Pentecost. What we celebrate today, 50 days after the resurrection. We hear the account in our first reading today in the Acts of the Apostle, and it describes the moment, Pentecost, where a power is unleashed upon the world. A power that changes lives, that brings people from despair to hope, to fill their life with meaning and purpose. And throughout history, there's been times where this power that's been unleashed upon the world has been more visible, noticeable. Certainly, we saw that in the early church, where Christianity just spread like wildfire across the Roman Empire, even in the face of fierce persecution. You got the missionary work of St. Patrick in Ireland in the 5th century, where basically an entire pagan culture was transformed in one generation. You got Mexico in the 16th century with Our Lady of Guadalupe, and you have millions of indigenous people convert to the faith, are baptized, become Catholic. 9 million people. These were not ordinary moments in the course of history. These were like moments of revival. Revival just meaning, right, something that is dead or dying or is revived. It's brought back to life. New life is pumped into it. And I think we're entering into perhaps one of those times again. At least pockets. Now, to be sure, right, the recent Pew Research study came out that showed that there's still more people that are leaving the church than there are entering the church. But the study did show, after now decades of people who identify as nuns, identify as no religious affiliation, how that's been just increasing over the last couple of decades, that this past study showed that that has stopped. The rise has stopped. And so it is true that more people are still leaving the church than entering, but it's also, I think, clear that something else is happening. That we're starting to see perhaps this power being unleashed in a new way. You know, there's dioceses across the country have reported this past Easter increases of 30%, 40%, 50, even some more than 70% of increase of people entering the church and becoming Catholic this past Easter. I was with our own Bishop Hicks, on this past Wednesday with a gathering of a number of priests, and he said the number of people that entered in the church this past Easter skyrocketed. He said that it more than doubled. I spoke with somebody who was at the cathedral a couple weeks ago when those were brought into the church. He said the cathedral was bursting at the seams. It's not just the U.S. In Australia, the Catholic Herald described a revival in Sydney's Catholic Church with, again, a record number of adult baptisms this past Easter, 30%. France, increase of 45% this year. Austria, 85% increase. I could go on and on and on. But the place that it is most evident is amongst the younger generation. I've got a number of priest buddies throughout the country that serve as chaplains at different universities. I was talking to the chaplain at University of Nebraska in Lincoln. Just a week after Easter, I saw him, and he said, we baptized 70 students. He said it was the highest that the University of Nebraska had ever seen. Arizona State University, seeing upwards over 2,500 young adults attending Mass every weekend. Those numbers just way increased in the previous years, he said. Ohio State, 50 students baptized, significant Mass attendance increase. I know we have a lot of Notre Dame fans, so some of you didn't just hear that statistic. As soon as I said Ohio State, I've got you covered though. Ohio State University, this past year, they saw a record number of students enter the Catholic Church this year. EWTN reported that the Google searches for how do I become Catholic have skyrocketed. 2-3 months ago, there was a spike of 373% of people just typing in, how do I become Catholic? Wall Street Journal had an article 6 months ago that said that as book sales been going down the last few years, Bible sales are going up. From a few years ago, 9.7 million copies of the Bible sold, to this 2024, over 15 million copies of the Bible sold. Why? Because people are hungry. And I think we are in a unique time where more and more people who were raised in a household that never went to church, that grew up in no faith at all. The Barna Institute did a huge study amongst Gen Z and younger. They said that they're describing Gen Z and younger as the open generation when it comes to the faith. They're open to hearing about the person of Jesus. They've tried everything else. Pleasure, performance, success, what have you, still noticing and feeling a void. I'm seeing it more and more. Someone came in the office a few weeks ago now, out of nowhere, saying, like, what am I supposed to call you even? I go, well, typically people call me Father, but you can call me what you want. And she didn't grow up from any faith background at all, and said that she's starting to feel this tug over the last 6 months of a relationship with Jesus. And she said, Father Mark, I don't know anything, she said. I don't know anything. And I thought after that of this story, we don't hear it ever on our weekend gatherings in the lectionary, but a couple chapters later in Acts, Philip, filled, inspired by the Holy Spirit, he goes to see a chariot. This guy's up in the chariot, an Ethiopian, and he's reading something. Philip looks up at the chariot and says, hey, what are you reading? The guy says, I'm reading Isaiah from the Old Testament. And Philip screams up and says, do you understand what you're reading? And the guy goes, how can I? I don't have anyone to teach me. And Philip jumps up into the chariot, rides with him, proclaims the gospel to him, tells them that Isaiah can only make sense because of the person of Jesus who came and died on the cross and died for your sins, gives them the gospel, and then later as they're driving along, the man sees a puddle of water and sees the water and turns to Philip and says, there's some water. Can you baptize me? Increasingly, what's going to be needed are people are going to need other people to hop up into their chariots, if you will, to teach them and to proclaim the good news of the gospel to them. They're open to it more and more. And that is a huge barrier is people don't know that the gospel is good news. That Jesus Christ did not come into the world to condemn the world, but to save it. There are so many people who think that they could never take a step in a church because they think as soon as they take a step in the church, they'd get struck by lightning. Jesus Christ came not to condemn the world, but to save it. The need is great. And so here's what I'm going to ask all of us here to do this week, a challenge, if you will, is to spend time this week with a piece of paper and a pen and draw 3 lines. Form 3 buckets, if you will. The first bucket are people that you're just praying for. That the Lord, you ask the Lord, these are oftentimes probably your grown children maybe, or grandchildren, who you're probably not going to be the one to reach them. But these are the people in this bucket that you just pray for, you fast for them, and you're praying that someone enters into their life that might inspire them by their witness. You pray for them. The second bucket are people who you see regularly. These are coworkers, these are neighbors, these may be people that you see at the gym regularly, people where a relationship already exists, but the faith has never really come up directly. Who are these people in this bucket? To pray for openings, windows, to bring up the issue of faith, to bring up the person of Jesus. It's a colleague who's going through a hard time, because when you pray like this, be amazed at the number of opportunities you'll see that will come up. A colleague is at work who's going through a tough time, who expresses that to you. Somebody you're watching your kid's sports game with on this sideline, and they're expressing a challenge of feeling sad or stressed. And you just be human with them. Oh, that's like, that sounds really stressful and very difficult. I can't imagine. And maybe you ask a question like, can I ask you, what do you turn to, like, to help with hope in times of sadness like this and stress? People tend to turn to compulsion. But see, as Christians, we have someone to turn to, a place to go, and we share that. We share that experience, our experience. And then lastly, the third bucket. And maybe it's only one person in this bucket, but someone that God is putting on your heart and nudging you to invite. Perhaps to invite to Mass, to pray with, confession, the Rescue Project, when we offer the Rescue Project, which is the proclamation of the good news. It could be Fit Shepherds. There was a guy at Mass last night sitting over there who was talking to a guy at the bar on Friday night at El Mio, and told him and invited him, hey, I'm going to be working out in the morning in the parking lot. You should come and join us. He came, and I meet him. He goes, yeah, this guy, I was talking to him in the bar last night, told me to come. I don't know why I'm here right now, but... That's what I'm talking about. Who does the Lord want you to put in each one of these buckets? And maybe just to close here, I know some of you are thinking like, I don't have it all together. Like this homily this weekend, it's just not for me. I'm a mess. Here's what I would say, and I say it gently. Get over yourself. We're all a mess. We're all broken. And the Lord, over and over and over again, chooses to use broken people, messes. There are no people who aren't broken or aren't messes. And so if you're waiting to have it all together, you'll never get in the game. You'll never experience this fullness piece of Christianity. We are wired to share the good news. And if we're waiting to have it all together or to not be a mess or to be perfect, it's just never going to happen. Pentecost, 2,000 years ago, a power was unleashed upon the world. 3,000 people, the snap of the finger, gave their lives to Christ, began to know that their life mattered, that they had meaning and purpose, that they were loved into existence from the foundations of the world, as Paul says. And Peter was just a blue-collar fisherman. But he allowed God to use him. And that same power is still being unleashed upon the world today. And perhaps, just maybe, we might be entering in a time of revival where the Spirit is going to be especially noticeable and powerful. The question becomes, who is God asking you just to pray for? Who is God asking you to speak to and pray for windows? And third, who's he asking you to invite? He's just waiting for you to say yes and for you to fill up your buckets.